That's with it. Everybody ready?
Ready.
Okay. We will call the regular meeting of Tuesday, May 9th to order. We can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Douglas?
Here.
Ms. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Horvath?
Here.
Mrs. Sensi?
Here.
And Mr. Thompson?
Here. Agenda,
I'll move.
I'll second.
any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
And Mr. Horvath?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of, it can't be for this May 9th, April 12th. Okay, we have a motion with that amendment.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Thompson? Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
And Mr. Horvath?
Abstain.
Motion passes.
All right, to begin board member reports,
We have that April 24th.
is there another one on there?
Yeah.
Yes,
there's
two.
Oh, okay, I see it down there now. I'm not used to this blue.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a motion for the, I did this last, yeah, the way up there. Yeah,
Look down here.
I'm sorry. I'll get that straight for next time. Your motion for the April 24th. We did the 12th and not the
Yeah.
24th. Okay.
I'll move for the 24th.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi?
Yes.
Mr. Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
And Mr. Horvath?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, starting board member reports here. It's always sad to learn of someone's passing, especially when it is a member of our Madison family. Recently, we learned the passing of Jerry McIntyre, retired teacher for the Madison local schools. Jerry was born on April 20th, 1944 in Corey, Pennsylvania, after he graduated from high school and with a degree in education from Edinburgh University. He then began his career of 32 years as a math teacher at Madison. Jerry also coached football, wrestling, softball, and swimming. He enjoyed golfing and fishing with his family and friends. Jerry leaves behind his wife of 55 years, Judy, and his daughters, Jennifer and Jamie, his grandchildren, siblings, nieces, nephews, and many friends. All of us at Madison schools, family, and friends. Is anyone wishing to give a board member report this evening? All right, we don't have anyone registered for public participation, so we'll move on to reports and recommendations of the.
They give my maid. Have your turn. Let's go.
I did this once. From the beginning. That's right. Yes, thank you.
So So this is the May 2023 five-year forecast. Some things I just wanted you to take into consideration that played a factor in this forecast. It does this forecast does follow the board-approved plan submitted to the Office of Budget and School Funding. This forecast incorporates the 2018 base model funding. We are in a biennium right now, and so there are two different models out there. There's the 2018 governor proposed model, and then there's the 2022 base funding model as proposed by the House of Representatives. I chose to go with the 2018 model as proposed by the governor, since the 2022 model has not yet been voted into legislation. It is a more conservative approach to the model. If we would have gone with the 2022 model, the House did incorporate greater funding, so it would have had a net favorable impact on the forecast. But I decided it was best to go with the more conservative. So they are voting on it in June of 2023, so a lot can change in the next 6 weeks. So we will. The cost of diesel fuel, food, and other materials are all. And the Federal Reserve has interest rates at 5% right now. They meet again on, I believe, June 13th or 14th. So they could raise it up to 5.25%. So the cost of everything, as we well know, is just rising. Special education costs for this year, the same as my November report, they've risen over the course of this year. We've just had students with. So that is something factor in May. Contract extension was something that I did factor into this forecast. It is an agenda item on tonight's agenda. We recently found out the health consortium that we take part in, they did grant us a what's called a premium holiday, meaning that we won't have to pay in the health insurance premiums. They gave us either the month of June or July, and I decided on June. So that'll save us around. Good news that we received. As we all know, given the age of our fleet of school buses and just general cost of repairs to our facilities, the buildings are all getting older. So trying to maintain the bus fleet and different things that need repaired around the district is a continuing expense. Something that we will have to have on the June agenda is the language for the renewed. It was originally voted on in then it generates $1 million or around $186,000. The next agenda for it to be able to go on the November 2023 ballot. Also, the emergency levy, which was originally voted on in 2009, it generates about 1.52 mils or $656,000. Will also be up for renewal, and it'll have to go on either the May 2024 or the November 2024. When both those were originally voted in, they do hit pretty close to each other when they'll have to be on the ballot. This next slide is just the forecast overview and a bar chart. I think it gives a nice depiction of how the finances are going to progress over the course of the 5-year period. So in fiscal year 2023, I'm forecasting that we're going to end this year with a positive $3 million balance with $285,000 in deficit spending. Next year, fiscal year 2024, a positive $1.2 million balance with $1.8 million in deficit spending. Fiscal year 2020, $147,000 with around $2.2 million in deficit spending. Fiscal year 2026, funds depleted of $3.1 million in deficit spending. Fiscal year 2027, $6.3 million, $0.8 million in deficit spending. This next slide is one that I just always kind of include. This is the financial forecast summary report. I think it's a cleaner version of what most people like to see. It shows the beginning balances for every year, plus your revenue, minus your expenditures, and those ending cash balances. The short report doesn't take into a line item that we call encumbrances, which is around $900,000. So that's why the short report looks a little bit different, but it does give a nice depiction of where. So in fiscal year 2023, a revenue shortfall is expected. This means that the expenditures are expected to be greater than revenues by $285,000. By the last year of the forecast, in fiscal year 2027, the district shortfall where expenditures are projected to be greater than revenue by $3.8 million. 27 projected expenses by 12% in order to balance its budget without any additional revenue. And also encumbrances that I mentioned. Next slide is just the depiction of the general schools gets our money in a pie chart form. So you'll see that our greatest source of revenue is from the state, coming in at about 51%. Our taxpayer money is about 42.4%. Property tax reimbursement, which is your homestead and rollback, about 4.29%. And all other sources is minimal at about 1%. This is a bar chart depiction of the total general fund revenue overview. It gives it all the way back to 2020. So 3% or $146,000 annually during the past 5-year period. 1.1% or $289,000 annually through fiscal year 2020. Revenue has the most projected average annual of $703,000. Noted the overall revenues from 20. Tax and property tax rollback. And this is just a bar chart of the different types of tax and tax rollbacks that the district receives. Real estate revenue accounts for the 39% of the upcoming renewal of the PI levy and the emergency levy. Areas you'll see in the last there, first starting in fiscal year 2025. The next slide is money from the state and various different restricted and unrestricted grants. These figures are all based on the 2018 model, the governor's model. This could look drastically different based on what happens in June if the House and the Senate pass a much different version. But for right now, this is what's being forecasted based on what we know as of. All other revenue, these are revenues that include tuition received by districts for non-resident students educated by the district. It also includes interest income, miscellaneous revenue. The historical average change was different by about $500,000. The projected average annual change is $169,000 through fiscal year 2027. The Fair School Funding Plan included the per pupil funding for any open enrollment students in the district that we were educating. Revenue, if any, was recorded differently prior to 2022. This will not include any open enrollment in revenue. It'll be posted differently into the open enrollment revenue of $1.2 million. This is just a depiction of all of the different sources of revenue that we saw in the pie chart, but this breaks it down from 2022 to 2027 percentage forms. You can see what's being forecasted for state funding, real estate, property tax allocation, and all other. Different way to view it. I did want to reference the House Bill 33 analysis. This is the House version that they currently have. It did pass the House by a vote of 78 to 9. Formulas based cost to the 2022 model, and it continues that phase in for years 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the plan. Pages and House Bill. I just kind of picked out a couple that I thought I would mention during this presentation, but House level for Ed Choice vouchers, it's currently at 200% of the federal poverty level. This bill would increase it to 450% in the proposal. It's $1 million appropriation over the biennium for the school resource officers. It establishes deadlines for the student wellness and success funding. It appropriates $500,000 for economically disadvantaged students for a cost study. It earmarks funding to conduct a study of access to all-day kindergarten and cutoff dates. It requires ODE to reimburse public and private schools participating in the federal meal program, the National School Lunch Program. The difference between the federal free reimbursement rate and the federal reimbursement rate for a reduced price meal for each student eligible for a reduced price meal and receiving a meal. So that would be a benefit that the district would receive. We would get reimbursed for the students who are receiving the reduced rate as well. So that would be an improvement if that bill passes. I know this is showing up a little bit small, but I tried to do a cash cumulative change based on the 2018 and the 2022 model. So the below chart is modeling that difference. The light blue is the 20. The gray is the 2018 version. So you can see there's a in the House of Representatives. If the 2022 model passes, there would be an additional $1.4 million next year, fiscal year 2024, $3 million in fiscal year 2025, $4.3 million in 2026, and $5 million in 2027. Moving on to the general fund expenditure overview. And the bar chart form is very similar to the revenues. It goes back to 2020. Total expenditures increased about 0.25% or $64,000 annually during the past 5-year period. And it's projected to increase 4.21% or $1.1 million annually through fiscal year 2027. Salaries has the largest projected average and annual variance compared to the historical average of $490,000. Most of this is attributed to the American Rescue Plan funds that we've been utilizing. That's why there's going to be such a big difference in the salaries. Those funds do expire at the end of fiscal year 2024. And so we are going to be seeing all of those monies for salaries that we would typically be paying out of the grant. We return to paying those teachers just out of the general. Again, this is the general fund expenditures, but in a pie chart format. As with any school, we're a service-based organization, and so our greatest expense is educating our students. And so salary and benefits are going to be our largest expense. Salaries are about 57.6% of our expenditures. Benefits, 20.7%. Purchase services, 16.1%. Supplies, 2.45. Salary expenditures by source, like I said in the previous slide, they represent about 57.6% of total expenditures, and they increased about 0.32% or $49,000. The 0.8% more than the 5-year historical average. You can just kind of see that little bit of a gradual uptick in the salaries. The next slide is benefit expenditures. So the benefits represent 22.48% of total expenditures, 93%. This an average annual rate of 4% through fiscal year 2027. The annual rate more than our 5-year historical. As I noted in the beginning of the presentation, the Health Consortium did give us that, save us around $315,000 to $400,000. Also, another thing I meant to type in here, but I did not. In November saw savings in this category as well, because when we went through our open enrollment phase, a lot of employees chose the consumer-driven health plan rather than plan one, which saved us a great deal of money as well. Purchase services, this just breaks down the different types of purchase services we have in the district. Property services, communications, utilities, tuition, pupil transportation, supplies and materials. I do have a typo there, it says benefits, but it should say purchase services. It did increase at an average of 1.93%. It's expected to grow about 4%. And it's about 2% more than the historical. All other expenditures, these can be your supplies and material, capital outlay, which would be construction, which we have none at this current time. But it represents 2.71% of the total expenditures. It's going, and a lot of this is due to inflation. It's growing at a historical average of 4%. Inflation, rising supply to this category as well. And like I noted earlier, the age of our bus fleet, the age of our buildings, we can expect some increases in this category. Just like the revenue, this expenditure breaks from 2022 to 2027, kind of showing items are expected to time. Every forecast, because enrollment is funding from the Ohio Department of Education. So if you look back to 2017, we had 2,879 pupils. As of this year,
2012, right?
Correct. We are at the projection is just based on the historical information and the live birth rate. 2027, and we hope this doesn't happen, but for students. The forecast at a glance, I think this gives a nice depiction of just going to end. So we began the year with $4.2 million with around $28.2 million in revenue. We expenditures, and I'm projecting we end the year at about $3.9 million. So just some final insights and considerations. It's very important for me to monitor over the course of the upcoming week the progression of the biennial budget and which model they choose to adopt. As a district, we'll have to plan for the funds and all of those salaries being returned to the general fund. Look into alternative revenue sources to decrease deficit spending in the future while providing the best possible education for our students. Continue to use surplus funds towards projects that produce a savings in the future. To help decrease expenditures. I think our community does a great job of donating and, we really have some nice partners here in the community. Like I said, the permanent improvement levy, which will generate the 1 mil, it will need to be renewed on the November 2023 ballot. And the emergency levy that generates 1.54 mils will need to go on either the May 2024 or November 2024. And this last slide shows up tiny, but I am required to show the full forecast entirely. So that is the full May 2023 forecast, and that concludes my presentation. Questions?
So when we went with all-day kindergarten, I clearly remember several of us making the statement that, this was guaranteed for 2 years. We didn't know what we were going to do after that 2-year time. How much is that all-day kindergarten costing?
We do have all of those staff members currently being funded out of the American Rescue grant funds. And so total salaries out of the American Rescue Plan that we allocated for this year are around $986,000.
It's not all day kindergarten.
It's not all, it does include an administrator.
A math teacher at the high school.
Was between the half day and funding the half day and funding the all day, or funding the every other day versus funding the all day?
It's basically 4 teachers, Michelle. So
Okay.
it's 4 additional teachers, depending upon the salaries of the people teaching. So, if they were all BA zeros, 4 additional teachers are about 60 to 75,000, but we have some experienced teachers that are teaching in that program as well.
But either way, we're good until fiscal year 2025. So we need to communicate that clearly all the time, that if we don't get more money from the state or federal government, or we don't pass a levy, we're not going to have that money come fiscal year 2025.
Correct.
I just think that we did talk about it when we rolled out the all-day kindergarten. I don't know that we've ever reiterated and talked about it as clearly as that. Certain that we are very clear with our community.
And even running some demographics out of the software for this presentation, even looking where Madison stacks up to different Lake County schools, I mean, we have very low expenditures per pupil. Our current expenditures per pupil per the CUP report were $11,118.14. which is one of the lowest out of Lake County. Center that are all much higher, the highest, being
Mhm.
here. So I think the fact that the school does so much based on the limited amount of funding that we receive is a real attribute to, our teachers and the board and the staff and even I was going to include these in the presentation, but I chose not to. But even the amount of millage we receive in Lake County compared to all the other districts. I mean, we're third lowest. And, I just think that it's crucial that we continue to have our levies renewed, look for additional revenue sources because, as you said, at a certain point, the grant funds are going to expire. So
Mhm. Yeah, and I know that you're, somewhat new, and you do a great job, by the way. We love having you. But it has historically always been that way. The per pupil expenditure for us has always been either the lowest or second to the lowest in Lake County. And our revenue has never been anywhere near as high as the others. So that's something that absolutely um, had a couple other questions. Do we track, and you may not know this offhand, look now compared to prior years? Are we having more or less
They're lower.
there? Do we know how?
I don't know how many lower, but I know with Berkshire's new campus, a lot of Ledgemont have gone to Berkshire.
Mhm.
So, but I can get those numbers.
Um, and then I just want to point out, because I mean, clearly on this chart where it says salary expenditures by source, and I mean, the bulk of our money goes to salaries. This is a service industry. And oftentimes, I don't think that people really look at school districts as if, I mean, they look at it like, you're required to educate my child. This is a service industry. We're providing a service.
and that's why I think it's a nice way to show the pie chart under the expenditures. I mean, salaries and benefits are the bulk of what we spend our money on, our staff to educate students.
Absolutely. And because it is a service industry, it's why it is so incredibly crucial that every interaction that any of our staff, our community is the most positive that it could possibly be. We need to make sure that every interaction that we have counts. We need to make sure that we're giving accurate information. Um, and that if things change, we relay those changes as well. I mean, I can't reiterate that enough. That really, it's going to take every one of our staff and us to make, any difference with our community as far as when it comes to funding, because the state's not going to always pull through for us. It's not always going to happen. Um, and to always make that we don't have any, that there's absolutely no question that there's any. When you look at the other expenditures by choice, by source, insurance costs, because when we're talking about the increase in um, supply costs for building and things, other expenditures by source, where we're talking about rising supply costs.
And she mentioned it in her presentation. It's a step. Yes.
Well, but when we're talking about insurance costs, I mean, I just know just from the homeowner's aspect, my homeowner's insurance doubled based on replacement costs because, and according to the agent, it's because supplies are so much more expensive. So did we take that portion into account as well?
Yeah, this covers, you know, all the different types of expenditures. So and the nice thing about the software I use is that it does literally go back to 2020. And every month after I close the month after it's over, it feeds in the live data. So which incorporates every single check that we write, every single expenditure, every payroll. So yes, it does have all the accurate live data. Enter in things that we know that are going to happen. The Health Consortium announced what the percentages were going to be. If we know insurance increase, inflation, rising costs.
Do we track our drop in enrollment? Is it people moving out of the district, like physically moving out of the district? Is it people pulling their kids from our school, sending them to charter school, online school?
It's the income several years. So that has been the major drop in enrollment. We've had very small kindergarten classes. Well, we used to have like 250 to 275 kids in a class. This year, we barely have 200 kindergartners.
Do we track the kids that are being pulled from our school and being sent somewhere else?
The online.
Online, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I can answer that really quick. But all of those students, if they live in our district, they are tracked through our EMIS. And so we still, they're still in our district. And so they're listed, either they're online or if they are going to a private school or whatever. Student that, is living in Madison, we still have, ways of tracking them.
And if a parent decides to pull their child from our school, do we do any type of exit interview with the parent to determine why they?
No, I don't think we do.
I think it would be, I personally would like to know how many people.
A lot is changed with the pandemic. Now that we're getting back to normal, I think that's something that we can easily look into. A lot of people didn't want to bring their school students back into, public schools, and so they chose all sorts of different ways to educate.
Thank you.
I do have one clarification. I think the primary next year is March,
Oh,
not May, because
Did
it's
I
a
make a
presidential, it's a
you are
president,
correct.
it's a presidential year,
Yeah.
so.
When do we have to get the renewal on
So
for this year?
typically, there's, for the PI, there's, anytime you put something on the ballot, you have to have more than one, is it a reading? Is that what it's? More than one reading. So I'll get the official ballot language from the attorney. It'll have to go on next agenda. And then I'll send it, to the Board of Elections, and then we'll have to have it on for a second time. And then there's just a couple steps a couple of times you have to have it on the agenda before it can officially be on the ballot.
Is this the first time I've been on the board to have that, and I'm just not familiar. Do we have to set up a committee for that?
Renewal.
A renewal committee?
Again, based on the findings of the, we have to be careful of district involvement in those committees.
For all school districts.
Right.
They ruled that, was it superintendents, treasurers,
And board members.
and board members, they're really.
We're still getting
wanting-
guidance.
Yeah, like I can still provide the figures, of course, but they're really wanting parent organizations to step up and do the.
Community to take the lead.
Yeah, the levy committee.
Levy can be used for?
Oh, sure. So, with any school district, we use fund accounting. It's not like your personal checking accounts where it's all in one pot. Every single fund, that Madison Schools has is in its own designated fund. Permanent improvement funds, were funds that can only be used for permanent on in the district. So we generate a very low millage amount, $186,000 for permanent improvement. It's tiny. So if anything major were to happen in the district, or we were able to build something, that would be one of use those funds every single year as 100. It sounds like a lot of money, and we are, obviously very grateful that we have that money, but $186,000 of a HVAC unit get us very far.
And
So it's
when that,
mainly building issues.
and buses, because
Buses.
it was originally voted in, if you remember, for years and years and years, it was the bus levy, and that one mill used to buy 3 buses. That one mill can based on current pricing. If that's all we did with it, and then we'd have a little bit left to do other things. So it doesn't go very far.
And our, things are starting to deteriorate. I think, Pat approached Angela and I that a roof was, starting to get to the point where it needed repair. So the renewal of the both important, and, ways to garner additional revenue.
The,
The high school.
um, Yeah. which several sections.
Does the new buildings up by the 90 come into play at all that much? Or, the hotels, because they're got to be going on about 4 or 5 years now, and then all the new gas stations, and I believe there's a new one gas station,
That's,
Monlowe's.
They typically they all apply for abatement.
Are they all 10-year
That's in
abatements?
tax incentive district. So yes, it was 10-year, and then for the hotels, there were, or Sean, Michelle, I don't know what, there were for the hotels, and maybe it was the whole district, an additional 5 years, but a different percentage. Right?
Yeah, I think it was just the hotels. I don't believe that if I recall, I don't believe it was Sheets or Loves. I think it was just the hotels that they approached us about. And we did give them that additional time, but not for the full percentage.
I can get back with.
Because I'm sure people will ask that question.
Right.
As we
We
are
see
talking
it.
about these renewals and stuff, that is things people will start to put out there. They think just because all those are built out there, we're getting all this extra money right now. And it could be, 10 years from now, really, where we start to see some real money from it.
That's an important.
Yeah, I think we get some,
We
but
get a
it's
portion.
not anywhere
I mean-
near what people.
We show that we're not getting this percentage.
Yeah, we encourage, new growth within the community, for sure, but it's not an instantaneous process that we receive the funds.
Well, and Brian, you brought up a few times about that petites.
Yes, we're working on that. We are working on that.
Which means what?
I have had conversations with Mr. De Robertis, who has some connections over there.
Mhm.
And we're creating a vision and a plan that we'll bring to you guys before we take it to Petiti, and, prioritize what it is that we're asking for. We just don't want to go in and ask and say, we need this amount of money, but we're not sure what we're gonna do with it. So that is on the books.
You're
as we
bringing up a
speak.
proposal of some
Yes.
sort.
Correct. Yes.
Community partnership.
I have to finish my section. Oh, sorry, was there no other?
Nope.
I would like to recommend the approval of the May 2023 5-year forecast as presented.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, I would like to recommend the approval of the April 2023 financial statements as presented.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, I would like to recommend the approval of the below then and now certificates.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, I would like to recommend the approval of Fund 29025 for the creation of the Class of 2025 fund.
I'll move.
A second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, I would like to recommend the approval of the following donations. To accept a generous donation of candy from Connie Buchanan to Madison High School to be used for their mocktail event. A generous donation of gently used clothing from Joanne Eckert to North Opposite. To accept a generous donation of toys from Connie Buchanan to North Elementary School to be used as prizes in their PBIS treasure chest. To accept a generous donation of $500 from, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced this, Carmuse Americas to Madison High School Robotics Club to be used as needed. To accept a generous donation of $250 from Progressive Insurance Foundation to South Elementary School to be used as needed.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes. And that concludes the treasurer's report section.
All right, before we go into reports of the administrative team, I have the extension of the negotiated agreement with the Madison Education Association. So we're asking you to approve the extension of the current negotiated agreement with the Madison Education Association for the 2023-20 of August 13th, 2023 through August 12th, 2024. And this reflects a 1.5% base raise.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Horvath.
Abstain.
Motion passes.
All right, couple things. First, I do want to thank MEA for working with us on a contract role. They are very mindful of the financial situation in this district and have worked consistently with us to be reasonable in times that are tough for everybody. So I want to thank MEA for that this evening. I also want to thank all our staff. It's, you know, a lot goes on in the district to celebrate our teachers during this week and our staff. And for so many, with kids coming back full time, a lot of kids coming back, some kids that have never had school. We're dealing with all sorts of challenges that we haven't dealt with before. And our staff has worked hard. We've worked with substitute shortages. They have covered classes. They have helped out where needed, you know, I appreciate all our staff does on a daily basis. A great staff, and we really do. Staff. This evening, I am very pleased to present Ms. Lisa Spetz, our literacy coordinator, as she is worked very hard this year and has some very compelling data that shows us why all-day kindergarten is working. And we have to figure out a way with this community to keep it beyond the 2 years that we promised. I think, you know, our kids need it. And I'm hopeful that, you know, Sarah forecasted very conservatively, not showing new income. She didn't even show what was in the governor's budget. And I'm usually either optimistic or pessimistic. I'm optimistic that the state is going to come through with something. And I don't know yet. But you know, the governor had an increase with the SRO funding. The House wanted to fund with fiscal year 20 would help this district greatly. So now it's in the hands of the Senate. And as I've said before, it goes from the Senate to that conference committee of 5. And that's where the budget gets hashed out. So I'm what was in the forecast. Fingers crossed and all that, those kinds of things. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Ms. Lisa Spetz, and she's going to talk happening in our district.
Thanks.
Yep.
I'm Lisa. Nice to meet you guys. I'm new to this role. I was 30+ years an intervention specialist and worked with myriad of different populations throughout my career, all the way. I want to share with you a little bit about our comprehensive structured literacy process. And that sounds like a big way for us to strategically set up a plan to help a student move all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade in a very explicit and systematic way so that nobody falls through the cracks. I just wanted to start with this just so you can see this is the simple view of reading. This is what we have broken down over 50+ years of research has broken down the actual comprehension times decoding, the ability to word attack equals reading comprehension. If you are missing language comprehension, if you're not comprehending what's being said, you'll see it's multiplicative. So 1 times 0 equals 0 and vice versa. You have to have both pieces in order for it to work, for comprehension to actually happen. There's a hyperlink below, the Science of Reading Guidebook. That's by the National Reading Panel. And that will give you all of the information that you need to know about what is the science of reading, because it has been touted around, but this actually. What did you want to say?
I just was going to say that has been shared with you, so you have that
Yeah.
underneath.
And like I said, I'm just going to go really quick through this. So this is our multi-tiered system of support. And basically, it's a triangle. The bottom is the core. That's our tier 1. And that's the instruction that everybody gets in the elementary grade. And we are using strategic and targeted intervention is second. That's tier 2. And that's where we've incorporated Haggerty and Wilson Light. And those are based upon diagnostics that we put in place so that we understand what gaps or sub-skills still need to be strengthened. And from there, we strategically plan that process. This has all started in the past year, so it's in its infancy, and we are moving in the right direction. As of right now, we have all of our intervention specialists and our title people, Wilson, trained with the Wilson overview. Everyone knows how to use Haggerty. Haggerty is a phonologic awareness. It's the ability to manipulate sounds, and you need that in order to be able to read. So those two pieces together, what works together so that students can read fluently. And then we have our tier 3 intensive intervention. That is a much more intensive process. It is still utilizing Haggerty in the Wilson intensive reading program, but it is much more prescriptive, higher levels of exposures and intensity levels so that students can gain mastery. And we're working, the entire staff knows that we're working for 90% mastery. Got to have 90% in order for something to be mastered and they can actually use it. I just left this on there just because I just wanted you to see that structured literacy is just an approach to teaching literacy that emphasizes highly explicit, systematic, and cumulative teaching of all the important components of literacy, and all of those have been broken down over 50 years plus of research, which the science of reading will give kind of a recap of that little guidebook. The components include both foundational skills, which is pre-K through third, which is the decoding and spelling components. And then as you 12, you're getting into the more of the reading comprehension, written expression, and Greek and Latin roots. This you might want to check out. This is about 2 minutes long, and this is actually from one of our professional development components called Letters, which is the science of reading. All of our teachers have gone through K through 3 or 4, have gone through Letters or are going through Letters right now. And this is a story about a school district, very much like Madison, that was struggling. Their demographics changed drastically, and they had a lot of students that were not reading, like 38, 39% that were targeted yellow or red. And over a 4-year process, this principal and this researcher set up a process, the structured literacy process, which we are actually following in Madison from that 37% in 4 years down to 4% of the students. So that is a good what we're putting into place right now. And it's super exciting. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff that we've been working very hard going into place, all these puzzle pieces at once. But by next year, we should see a pretty decent return. And once I get to kindergarten, which I'm going to get to in just a second, here, can you click on North?
Yeah.
This is where you see data doesn't lie. And this is the exciting stuff. And you want me just to open it up, Ames Web, and go through it real quick? Let's do that.
Do you have the pictures in here or not? No.
No, I don't. I hyperlinked it.
If you think you can get to it quickly.
Yeah, I can get.
Okay, there's a new tab.
And a couple things while Lisa's looking into that. It started with this Haggerty and Letters through that grant that we had through the state support team 2016. And the missing puzzle piece, which I think both Lisa and Gretchen can attest to, was that we didn't have a core reading program. For years, because we didn't have funds, we couldn't purchase that core curriculum because core curriculum is very expensive. So one of the things that we did with our ARP funds, core reading program, which provides that tier 1 intervention. And so now we have all the pieces in place. It's huge.
Like they're very, very good.
I could add something else to that. The science of reading is a big deal right now, with our governor. And so I think it's important to note that Madison was already ahead of the game before this became a huge piece to literature and moving forward to the state of Ohio. So we went about a very structured approach for us and what we chose in terms of the curriculum. And so we're already kind of ahead of some other schools in Ohio that have already been following the science of reading.
So this is going to be difficult with me because this tends to do this. Everybody and then they update all that information. So Ames Web is not allowing me to get in and actually show it to you. But I will go ahead and give you access
to your device as her and get to her PowerPoint?
Can I do
Log
it?
you out.
Yeah.
Yeah, log you out, log in. Switch the user and let's do that, because I really want you to see the charts. I
Yeah.
think the charts are telling.
Of diagnostics from the beginning of the year to right now, and I'm doing the diagnostics with the Blitz team, have gone down substantially. Please be patient with me just a second.
Are we gonna do update?
And just so you know, as we're putting these procedures and processes in place, I am going to the office hours every single time. Every single time.
Almost there.
So I'm talking with Michelle, Aaliyah, and Carolyn Turner, which are leads for literacy for the whole state of Ohio. And I go to their office hours. They're like, "Hi, Lisa, you're back." Yes, I am, with questions for you. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that the process that we're putting in place is. Been looking at every single thing that I've been creating and have been telling me that's right.
Just go to the bottom and sign in. They may have to, you have to do your multi-factor authentication. I know.
That's okay. My phone.
Okay.
I know, it's a pain sometimes, it really is.
And if you can tell Lisa's diligence with this new position, she was an intervention specialist that I lost. So I missed her tremendously, but I was also championing her for taking the position. So
Jen, she needs this. We need her.
yes. Good in this position.
Sorry, guys. It's just like. Oh, I don't.
All right, we're gonna find your,
Yeah.
your slides, and we're good to go. There you
Okay.
go.
Now you're thinking this better be good.
It is, I swear. All right, so this is 2021 at North. Okay, so you can see at the beginning of the school year.
No, it's not, but this is in the email that you sent us though, right? These links.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can look at all of this.
But you may have to click share, request for her to share
Right.
that document.
Okay.
And I definitely will, okay. So you can kind of just see by the triangles itself, and you can look at the numbers also if you'd like. This basically delineates that we're starting the kindergarten year with a lot of kids in the red.
Yeah.
Those are students that are not ready for kindergarten.
That's intensive
Yes,
interventions.
that's
needed.
intensive interventions, and even the yellow. I mean, it's intensive. It's not as intensive as the tier 3 kids, but the tier 2 kids take a lot of time. They say that the average kindergartner needs 60 to 80 minutes of intensive intervention in order to close the gap if they're behind. Once you reach 4th grade, it's a 240-minute process. So you can see why we want to intervene early, okay? And you can take a look at the numbers because but you can see the difference from 34 to 22, from 7 in the green to 22 in the green. And this was 2021.
Okay, hang on, because I can't really see that far. It's probably my eyes, but it was a little small. Don't laugh at me, Sean. I see you over there giggling.
I got my glasses.
So the first slide here is the beginning of the year, and that's going to be
Last year.
that was last year, but that's in the fall when they come in.
Yeah.
What's the middle?
The middle is the winter.
Uh-huh.
And then
So there's
spring.
3.
Very good.
So you can see the
Very big.
Apples to apples for sure.
right, and here's south in 2021.
And remember, this was,
22.
half day.
This is
Well,
half
all
day.
you know, the every other day
Right.
model, all day, every other day.
Okay,
Mhm.
right. Then
Was this some of this online stuff still?
No,
No.
It was when they were doing like
but they were. in
every other day,
kindergarten.
all day.
They were in kindergarten and some of them didn't have any school.
Now here's all day kindergarten. Can you see the difference?
And that's north?
This is north.
Wow.
And same thing.
That's
Like
this
these
year?
ladies
Yeah.
have done absolutely everything with open court to fidelity. They have utilized Haggerty too.
Wow.
And students who struggle with reading, 70% of the game is phonologic in nature. And that Haggerty plus the core, the code that goes in kindergarten. I walked into kindergarten in January in several different ones because I've just been kind of checking in and hitting the bottom. And I walked in cold reading. The entire class is reading. We're all reading, except for maybe one student. It's crazy. So this, if we continue this and we share this with the community, they're going to see the reason that we need to have this in place.
Absolutely.
And this is just the beginning. As we go up in our process for structured literacy, our students who are in the yellow and the red that are really struggling and the gap is huge, with these particular the gap in a 2-year process. 3-year if they're triple deficit dyslexic. So, I mean, we're using the right
That's
stuff.
some short term, yeah.
That's short term.
Exactly. Can we create a section on our website that talks and put these slides basically side to side, north, the half day, north all day, that type of thing.
Put on
Let me show you
Facebook too.
Sal.
Anyone looks at our website. Should get it out. You know what I mean? What's that?
Yeah, sure.
See? So that's core curriculum plus Haggerty. And that's our teachers. I have to be honest, the kindergarten teachers have done absolutely everything that they've been asked to do. And there's your results. So, and that's just the beginning. Kindergarten is what I put on this slide, but there are other grade levels that are like 3rd grade at North, absolutely killing. So the gap is closing for students who are struggling. So
Amazing.
just the last thing that I need to say, and then I'm gonna leave you guys alone, is well, I must have taken it off. Oh no, we didn't. Looking forward, we're working on, our goal is wraparound support. So the kids are going to get services based upon what we gather as far as our data from diagnostics, and they're going to get it before they're special ed kids. And the goal is this, the goal is to intervene early enough with the correct stuff, with the amount and frequency and intensity needed so that they don't become special ed students. There you can take a look at what I'm doing, but basically we're starting in. Any questions?
Oh, this is
Thank you.
great. This is great.
Thank you.
You should come back every meeting.
Yeah.
Well, there'll be more good stuff to
Right.
come.
Lisa doesn't want to present and run, but she does have a son who's playing
Yeah.
baseball right now.
So thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I know we've had a rather long meeting and we still have executive session. this evening. You said- I'm gonna go through the agenda and then we've got a special resolution and you can talk all about it then. So we're gonna just run through the order of the agenda. All right, ready for the recommendations then? We are going, under the personnel motion this evening, we have several things. To approve with regret the retirement resignation of Mary Leonard, South Elementary School secretary, effective January 1st, 2024, after 34 years of regret the retirement resignation of Beth Ziegler, Madison High School science teacher, effective October. To approve the resignation of Ashley Cunningham, intervention specialist at Madison Pre-K, effective May 26, 2023. I'm going to double check because with benefits, it should say the end of the contract. So right now, approve it as is. If I have to bring it back, I will.
Okay.
And then we're asking you to approve the unpaid leave request of Jacqueline Rhodey, Madison High School counselor for the period of April 21st, 2023 through May 26th, 2023, and if necessary, beyond the unpaid leave date pursuant to the MEA negotiated agreement. To accept the separation agreement with Jennifer Calhoun effective May 5th, 2023, and upon effective the end of the contract year. Then we're asking you to enter into the following employment contracts to employ Carolyn Quinn as a long-term substitute effective April 13th, 2023 through May 26th, 2023, perform the duties of Jacqueline Rhodey. To employ April Leppelmeyer as a long-term substitute effective April 3rd, 2023 through May 26th, 2023, to perform the duties of Laura Arietta. To employ Ryan Sabota as Madison Middle School and effective the 2023-24 school year. To employ Jamie Moore as an educational assistant cafeteria position at North Elementary School effective May 1st, 2023. To employ the following substitute teacher as approved by the Educational Service Center of the Western Reserve and the Madison or the Madison Local School District's district superintendent, Rayanne Atkins, and that's for the 2022-23 school year. The following non-certificated person under a one-year limited personal service contract for the 2023-24 school year. David Bill, Madison High School volleyball coach. And to employ Rachel Pridemore as a 3-hour non-union pre-K aide at Madison Pre-K effective May 1st, 2023. And to approve the following transfer, Amanda Haruska from a 3-hour position as an educational assistant playground at North Elementary School to a 6.25-hour position as a special needs assistant, 1-to-1 support at North Elementary School effective April 17th, 2020. And that's the personnel motion.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I do. Mr. Sabota is here this evening. I always like to have our new teachers here. Brian is not new as he has been working very hard this year, all since January, doing the vocal music program. He's done a wonderful job from 6 to 12. Sent him here this evening.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, and I have a granddaughter that is very fond of you. So, yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes,
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes,
Motion passed.
And we have our annual Teacher Appreciation Week resolution. Talked about it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's a resolution declaring Teacher Appreciation Week in our school district.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Thank you to our teachers.
And probably the most, oh, you got to vote.
Yeah.
One second.
Roll call?
Sorry.
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
yes,
and Mr. Horvath.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And probably the most important thing you will do all year and this evening is the approval of graduates of the class of 2023.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
How many students do we have graduating?
This is a smaller class, so we have 195 students that are on the list.
considering not being on the list.
There
How
are
many?
some they are finalizing that list as we speak, but there's probably 10 to 15 kids. And they'll be doing summer school and they will get their diplomas once they all the new seals and requirements. Most of the students have gotten through the hoops of the testing or the seal pathways. Some of them are still finishing up credit recovery. So we have several that, as always, every year are on the bubble. But many of them will manage to pull it off between now and next Friday.
I think it's important to note too that this is the residual of COVID.
Yeah.
And so these seniors were out for their sophomore, some of them even their junior years. So that's when we talk about credit recovery and them having the opportunity to go through. We have our summer school program already up and the students identified, but this is where a lot of the students this year may have had a little bit more of a struggle as seniors than in the past.
Do we still have some form of our mom at school?
Well, funny you mentioned that. We are in the middle of this grant, we're at the beginning phase of this grant program that I think for next year is going to provide us the funds and the finding the right person to do that mom at school program.
And can you explain for
Yes.
maybe some that aren't familiar with that?
So several years ago, through some of our title funding, we had a retired educator that would help to work with kids that were at risk and get them across the stage. And, you know, it's that relationship piece, and developing those relationships with the families and following through and tracking the data. So when they come in as ninth graders, if they're behind, making sure they don't stay behind and getting, you know, caught up in 10th grade and then 11th grade and 12th grade. So we are looking at that being one of our interventions through our grant program. We all met Mr. Brady, Dave and Jen and I all were down in Worcester 2 weeks ago at a meeting. And we, you know, talked about that plan and Mrs. Bean and what it will mean and what it will look like.
Or a cohort.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
like 4 other schools in the state of Ohio that are identified, each child on track. And so it was a great opportunity to meet other school districts. Euclid is the closest one. We're the only one in Lake County. See, so this is where we're actually starting to track our students. And so that position that Angela's speaking of is going to be really an integral part.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to have this opportunity because it's kind of where we started with, we were on the ground floor with the science of reading in 2016. This is what the state tracking graduates and helping them get across the stage. And one of the things that, you know, being in on the ground floor, you're also waiting for things from the state. So they've promised us the tool that we're going to be able to see all this wonderful data and be able to make nice reports and understand where things are at, and the tool's not ready yet. But I'm excited to be a part of it.
The woman that we had in that position, she really did. She really, I know that you touched on, you know, building those relationships, but I mean, she would track those kids down.
Oh, she did.
Yeah. She was very determined, and she made the parents, at least the ones that had spoke to me about her, really seemed to like her. I'm assuming she's probably moved on since then. Is there any chance of getting her back?
She's at a phase in her life where she's, you know, enjoying retirement.
Sure, I understand.
She's,
Yeah.
she's got a milestone birth. I mean, I still talk to her and, you know, but she's ready to do other things.
I understand.
But I will pass on the kind words.
Sure, thank you.
Did we have a motion and a second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Presentation this evening, and she.
Thank you.
know, I am excited to present a resolution recognizing and commending Elizabeth Carruthers for earning the Girl Scout Gold Award. Whereas Elizabeth Carruthers, a senior at Madison High School, is also a member of Girl Scout Troop 27770. And whereas Elizabeth has been awarded the Girl Scout Gold Award, the highest honor a member of the Girl Scouts can attain. And whereas Elizabeth's Gold Award project was researching, designing, fundraised, built, and installed a blessing box at North Star Church in Perry, Ohio. And whereas Elizabeth's projects fills in gaps where our local food pantries are not available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People are able to take what they want and leave what they can. The box is filled with canned and dried goods as well as hygiene products, pet food. And whereas overall, Elizabeth organized a food drive to initially stocked the blessing box and logged in 80 hours to complete the project at a cost of $257, which was donated by Joni Kean of Health Markets in Madison. And whereas Elizabeth's achievement is a source of pride and accomplishment, not only to her family and her troop, but to our entire community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Education commends and applauds Elizabeth Carruthers for earning the prestigious Girl Scout Gold Award and living up to the ideals of the Girl Scout oath. Congratulations. You want to do a first and a second discussion?
Sure.
Well, we got to do a first and a second before we get, okay, I move.
I'll second.
Discussion.
All right, well, a little bit about your work and why this was so important to you.
So I first started my project when I was working at the food bank volunteering, and I realized that it's only open twice a week and for like limited hours, like only 2 hours at a time. And I realized that many people during those hours probably can't like actually go there. And I thought, building a blessing box would allow people to go there at any time they wanted, at any time of the week, with privacy too. I also learned that a lot of people won't go to the food bank because of like being embarrassed. And I worked with a lot of people of the community. I worked with Joni Keene. She was my advisor, and she also donated like all the monetary donations for it. I hosted a food drive at the high school for it as well. I actually built the box. That was really awesome. And I got to work with all my church elders. And I felt so much love from the community from the box, and it's amazing. Together.
Awesome.
That's wonderful. How old were you when you started Girl Scouts?
Kindergarten.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you stuck through it every single year, and good for you.
Military kid. I was a military kid.
Oh.
I was in Washington State, New York State, South Carolina, and Ohio.
Mhm. And who taught you how to use the power tools to make your box?
My dad.
Is this Dad? All right.
Yeah.
Good job, Dad. I mean, those are skills she obviously needed and used and will continue to use, I'm sure. That's a great job. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Good job.
All right, roll call.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, we have the consent calendar. Several items this evening. The first item is to enter into a contract with Healthcare Process Consulting to assist in managing the district's Medicaid school program for the 3-year period beginning July 1st, 2023, at a cost of $12,000 per year. To enter into a foundation for the 2023 school year to assist high school seniors in financial aid planning for post-secondary education. To enter into a consultant services as cheerleading choreographer services effective August 5th, 2023. and to authorize the execution and delivery of a renewal agreement to the Master Electric Energy Sales Agreement between the district and Power for Schools endorsed electric supplier, NG Resources LLC.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I got a question about this renewal. With electric rates, everybody. Will this be help us or
So we go through, we're part of the Ohio Schools Council, and they go out and find the best rate for many different sources like gas, electric. And so this is the Power for Schools. They were actually our supplier last year, and they are again this year, the Ohio Schools Council recommendation with the lowest rate.
and they said that the rates are gonna, like, they're talking like for the lemonade company, double from June 1st and stuff. Is this gonna be much more than what we're, do we
This
have any
locks
idea?
us in.
It does like,
It locks us into a rate in the contract.
Is that rate higher than the one that we currently pay?
I do not know the exact answer to that, so I will get.
I was just curious because the hot top. Yeah, I don't
I'll
know.
have to look it up. I will get back.
I'm just curious. Thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Horvath,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Thompson.
Yes,
Motion passes.
We have a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of a conference with an attorney concerning disputes involving pending or imminent court action.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We will not be conducting any business. When we return from executive session, we'll simply be adjourning the meeting. Roll call?
Mrs. Sensi,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
and Mr. Horvath.
Yes.
We stand in recess.